1866, a woman named Eleanor Blackwood sat down in a wooden chair in her bedroom in rural Pennsylvania. She didn't get up for 40 years, not to eat, not to sleep, not to bathe. The locals said her eyes never closed, not even once. When visitors would approach her home on the outskirts of Millvale, they'd report hearing whispers coming from inside the walls. Some claimed to see her staring through the upstairs window, her pale face unchanged by time, her body motionless except for her lips, which moved constantly as if engaged in conversation with someone no one else could see. What drove Eleanor to sit still for 4 decades? The answer is far more terrifying than you could imagine. The story of Eleanor Blackwood begins not with her, but with her husband, Thomas. A respected doctor with a promising career ahead of him, Thomas Blackwood was known throughout Pennsylvania for his innovative surgical techniques. But in 1865, something changed. Thomas began experimenting with treatments that strayed far beyond accepted medical practice. Thomas had become obsessed with the concept of immortality, not in a religious sense, but in a literal one. He believed the human body could be preserved indefinitely if the right combination of chemicals and procedures were applied. His colleagues dismissed his theories as nonsense, but Thomas was determined to prove them wrong. Late at night, Thomas would descend into the cellar of their grand Victorian home, where he'd established a makeshift laboratory. The locals reported strange smells emanating from the Blackwood estate. Pungent chemicals, decay, something unnatural. Eleanor, by all accounts, was a devoted wife. She'd married Thomas when she was just 19, enchanted by his intelligence and ambition. She'd given up her own aspirations of becoming a teacher to support his career. But as Thomas's experiments grew more extreme, Eleanor became increasingly isolated. Friends who visited noted her thinning frame, the dark circles under her eyes, and her reluctance to speak about her husband's work. In the winter of 1865, 3 patients under Thomas's care died unexpectedly. The official cause was listed as complications from surgery, but rumors spread that Thomas had been testing his preservation techniques on unwilling subjects. An investigation was launched, but before any conclusions could be reached, Thomas Blackwood disappeared. The night of his disappearance, neighbors reported hearing a woman scream coming from the Blackwood house. When authorities arrived the next morning, they found no sign of Thomas. What they did find was Eleanor, sitting perfectly still in a wooden chair in her bedroom, staring blankly at the wall. When questioned, Eleanor wouldn't or couldn't respond. She didn't acknowledge the officer's presence. She didn't blink. She didn't move. The only sign she was alive was the shallow rise and fall of her chest and the occasional movement of her lips, as if whispering to someone unseen. Medical experts were called in. They found no physical reason for Eleanor's condition. There were no signs of trauma or illness. Her pulse was steady, albeit unusually slow. One doctor noted that her skin felt unnaturally cool to the touch, like marble warmed slightly by the sun. After weeks of failed attempts to rouse Eleanor from her stupor, the authorities eventually gave up. With no evidence of foul play and no trace of Thomas Blackwood, the investigation stalled. Eleanor's sister, Margaret, moved into the house to care for her. Want to hear more incredible stories like this one? Make sure you're subscribed. Just tap the button below and ring that notification bell. Now let's dive deeper into this haunting mystery. Margaret kept detailed journals during this time, which provide our most reliable account of what happened next. According to Margaret, Eleanor never slept. Day and night she sat in that wooden chair, her eyes fixed on the same spot on the wall. Margaret would spoon broth into her sister's mouth, which Eleanor would swallow reflexively, but nothing more. "It is as if she is here, but not here," Margaret wrote. "Her body remains, but Eleanor herself has gone somewhere else." After 6 months of caring for her sister, Margaret began to experience strange phenomena in the house. She described hearing footsteps in Thomas's study when no one was there. Objects would move on their own. Most disturbing were the whispers, barely audible conversations that seemed to be happening inside the walls. Margaret became convinced that Thomas Blackwood had not disappeared at all, but was somehow still present in the house. In her final journal entry, dated October 17, 1866, she wrote, "I know now what he did. God forgive him. God forgive me for not stopping him. He found a way to transcend the physical, but at what cost? Eleanor is trapped between worlds, and he is using her as an anchor. I cannot stay here any longer. May the Lord have mercy on their souls." Margaret left the next day, never to return to the Blackwood house. She took up residence in Philadelphia and refused to speak of her sister or brother-in-law for the rest of her life. With Margaret gone, the task of caring for Eleanor fell to the community. A rotating schedule was established, with different townspeople taking turns to feed her and ensure she was clean. Many reported feeling deeply unsettled in the Blackwood house. Some refused to return after their first visit. One caretaker, a young woman named Sarah Collins, claimed to have witnessed Eleanor speaking, not just moving her lips, but actually conversing aloud. According to Sarah, Eleanor's voice was hollow and distant, as if coming from the bottom of a well. The words were incomprehensible, not in any language Sarah recognized. When she tried to interrupt, Eleanor's head snapped toward her with unnatural speed, her eyes suddenly alert and filled with what Sarah described as a hatred so pure it seemed to physically push me back. Sarah Collins never returned to the Blackwood house. 3 days after her experience, she was found dead in her own home, her body contorted in what the local doctor called a position impossible for the human spine to achieve naturally. In the decades that followed, the legend of Eleanor Blackwood grew. Children dared each other to approach the house and peek through the windows. Some claimed to have seen Eleanor turn her head to look at them, though her body never moved from the chair. Others reported seeing a man's silhouette standing behind her, his hand resting on her shoulder. The town's records show that 17 people who entered the Blackwood house over those 40 years died under mysterious circumstances within days of their visit. Some drowned in shallow water. Others fell from minimal heights yet suffered catastrophic injuries. A few simply went to sleep and never woke up, their faces frozen in expressions of absolute terror. In 1906, exactly 40 years after Eleanor first sat down in that wooden chair, a tremendous fire broke out in the Blackwood house. By the time the town's fire brigade arrived, the structure was completely engulfed in flames. The heat was reportedly so intense that it melted the metal components of their fire wagon. When the fire finally died down, searchers combed through the rubble, expecting to find Eleanor's remains. They found nothing. No body, no bones, not even the charred remnants of the wooden chair where she had sat for 4 decades. The only item recovered from the ashes was a small leather-bound journal, its cover singed but its pages largely intact. The journal was Thomas Blackwood's laboratory notes. Most of the content was scientific jargon, detailed descriptions of chemical compounds and surgical procedures. But the final pages contained something else entirely. "I have succeeded where all others have failed," Thomas wrote. "The separation is complete. I have freed myself from the prison of flesh. Eleanor, my loyal wife, has agreed to serve as my anchor. As long as she maintains her position, I can move freely between realms." The process was more painful for her than I anticipated, but such is the price of revolutionary science. In time, I believe I can bring her across to join me, but for now, she must remain the bridge. The final entry, dated the same day as Thomas's disappearance, read simply, "She has changed her mind. She wants to end the experiment. I cannot allow that. What has been started cannot be undone. She will sit. She will serve her purpose, forever, if necessary." The journal was kept in the town's archives until 1947, when it disappeared during a renovation of the town hall. The last person known to have read it was the town's historian, Dr. James Mitchell, who was found dead in his office the morning after recording his notes on the journal. The official cause was listed as a heart attack, but witnesses who discovered the body noted that Dr. Mitchell's eyes were wide open, his face frozen in an expression of profound horror. The land where the Blackwood house once stood remains empty to this day. Nothing grows there, no grass, no weeds, not even moss on the few scattered stones that form the foundation. Locals avoid the area, especially after dark. But here's where the story takes an even more disturbing turn. In 2010, a developer purchased the land, unaware of its history. When workers began excavating for a new foundation, they uncovered a sealed underground chamber that had survived the fire. Inside was a wooden chair, perfectly preserved, with deep grooves worn into the armrests, as if someone had gripped them tightly for a very, very long time. The construction was immediately halted. The chamber was photographed, then sealed again. The developer sold the land back to the town at a loss and left Pennsylvania altogether, refusing to discuss what he had seen in that underground room. What the public records don't show, what was kept out of the newspapers, was that behind the chair, scratched into the stone wall of the chamber in what appeared to be fingernail marks, was a message. He found a way back. A week after the chamber was discovered, a woman moved into a small apartment on the outskirts of town. No one knows where she came from. She keeps to herself, rarely venturing outside. Those who have met her describe her as unnaturally still, her movements minimal and precise. She doesn't blink as often as she should. And sometimes, people walking past her apartment late at night report seeing her through the window, sitting perfectly still in a wooden chair, staring at the wall, her lips moving as if in conversation with someone no one else can see. Is it possible that Eleanor Blackwood has returned? Or perhaps she never left at all? The woman hasn't aged a day since she arrived in town 15 years ago. And just last month, a local teenager who took a video of the woman through her window swears that when he played back the footage, he could see a man's reflection in the glass behind her, his hand resting on her shoulder, his face twisted into a smile that seemed too wide for a human mouth.
No one has seen that teenager since.
The door to the woman's apartment remains locked. The curtains are always drawn. But if you press your ear against the wall, they say you can hear whispers. A conversation between a man and a woman, discussing how long it takes for a human body to decay, and the many ways the soul can be bound to this world against its will.